These next set of notes will help you complete slides 8 through 11 in your Anatomical Terms interactive notebook. Just like in the previous sections, feel free to zoom in on areas if you need to. Just like last time also, there'll be a lot of dragging and dropping terms to label them. This time you're going to be labeling body cavities and different regions of the body. For this activity, zoom in a little bit. All you need to do for this is these terms here. You don't have to drag and drop them. You're just going to match the color of the serous membrane to the word and change the color of the font to match its corresponding serous membrane. For this activity, it's more dragging and dropping, and then you're coming up with terms in your own words, definitions for terms in your own words. And then this activity, definitely need to zoom in for this one. These are all of the body regions that you need to know. There's more on the anterior or ventral side of the body than there are posterior. But again, you can drag and drop right next to the line that points to the body region. So let's begin with the body cavities. A cavity basically means a hole or a hollow place. And your body has several hollow areas that are filled in with the different organs. But your organs aren't actually attached to your skin and your muscles, they just sort of hang in that area. And that's going to allow for some flexibility. And they're lined with a whole bunch of membranes to provide some lubrication so that way you can move around freely without things rubbing against each other in your insides. There are a few main cavities. We have the dorsal and ventral, just a reminder, dorsal is backside, ventral is front. You have your thoracic cavity, which basically means your chest. And in that hollow cavity, you have your heart, your trachea, which is your windpipe, your lungs. Next, you have your abdomen or your abdominal cavity. This is your stomach area. This contains your stomach, your spleen, your liver, your intestines, your kidneys, lots of stuff in your abdominal cavity. Then you have your pelvic cavity. This is your lower abdomen. This is where your urinary bladder and reproductive organs are. Then you have the structure called the diaphragm, and this separates the thoracic and abdominal region. That should say abdominal. So these are the different cavities in the human body. Cranial cavity is in our skull. That's where our brain goes. That is attached to our vertebral canal, which is where our spinal cord goes in between the bones of our vertebrae. And this all makes up the dorsal cavity. The ventral cavity is in the front. We have our thoracic cavity. It's where our heart and lungs go. Then we have our abdominal cavity, which is where your stomach, liver, spleen, and intestines go. And then the pelvic cavity, where the urinary bladder and reproductive organs are. And in between the thoracic and abdominal cavities, you have your diaphragm, which is a muscle that you use to breathe. So, as I mentioned earlier, that your body wall, the outer part of your body cavity, so this area, the outline of each of these cavities, and around each organ, you have these membranes called serous membranes. If the membrane is on that body wall, it's called a parietal. And if it is on those organs, it is called visceral. That word visceral means organs. And these membranes secrete something called serous fluid, which is that lubrication that's going to keep your organs from rubbing against the body wall and keeps them from rubbing against each other. So those two major types of serous membranes, the visceral and parietal membranes, can be further broken down based on the organs that they surround. So, for example, you can have the pleura. You can have visceral pleura and parietal pleura. These membranes surround the lungs. You could have pericardium. That means heart. That word cardi, like cardiovascular system, means heart. Here is a picture of that membrane that surrounds the heart. Here. So this would be the visceral pericardium because it is surrounding the heart, and then on the inner edge of your chest, on the inner surface of your chest, would be the parietal pericardium. Then you also have peritoneum. This refers to all your other organs in your abdominopelvic region, which basically means your abdomen and your pelvic region combined, such as your stomach and liver, would have visceral peritoneum or parietal peritoneum. And so this image shows a cross section of the human body. If you were to cut a person in half across the belly and separate arms and legs, this is what it would look like. We have the liver here. Here's the stomach and the kidneys. This part that's outlined in red lines that inner surface of the body wall right along here. So that is the parietal serous membrane, and we're talking about the organs of the abdomen, so that's peritoneum. So that's our parietal peritoneum. And then around each individual organ, the red line, that is the visceral peritoneum here, because that is the serous membranes that lines the organs, and we're talking about the organs of the abdomen. So it's visceral peritoneum. Visceral and parietal serous membranes, they have exactly the same function. So it is easy to get these mixed up. But the thing to remember is that visceral faces the outside and parietal faces the guts. So if we just look back at this image for just a second, we look at this visceral peritoneum around the liver and the stomach, it is facing towards the outside. The parietal peritoneum is on the inner wall of the body cavity, and it faces towards the organs. Next, we have the body regions. So the body is sort of broken up into all these different areas. And these different regions are good to know because when we talk about other structures later on this year, like your frontal lobe of your brain or your femoral artery in your leg, they are named for the regions that they are found in. And so those clues can help you. For example, we have the brachial region, which is in the upper arm. And we have an artery called the brachial artery found in that arm. So what I suggest you do is you pause this Edpuzzle and have this image up on a separate screen to help you drag and drop the terms for the different body regions into your interactive anatomical terms notebook. The one thing I want to point out, this word here, the olecranal here, um, the term I use is cubital. It means the same thing. So you won't see this word in your interactive notebook. Instead, you'll see the word cubital. That means the same thing as this. If there's anything in your interactive notebook that is not on this, Google it. This has a number of terms that are not included in that notebook. So just stick to what's in the notebook. The last thing we need to talk about are the different planes of the body. These are different ways to sort of split the body in half. The sagittal plane is down the middle. It separates your left and right sides. Mid-sagittal means right down the very center. You can also have parasagittal, which means slightly off center. Transverse is right across the belly, separates your superior and inferior halves. And then coronal goes right through the top of the head, down through the toes, and this separates your front and back halves of the body, or your anterior and posterior halves of the body. So this is a scene from the movie 13 Ghosts, where a really sharp pane of glass fell on this unfortunate character. What kind of cut is this? What plane was this cut made across the body? Next we have a scene from Ghost Ship. This image right here shows the cut that was made. What plane of the body was that cut made? And finally, we have a scene from the movie Under the Dome, where a big glass dome comes down over the town, kind of like in The Simpsons. And this is a very unfortunate cow. As you watch, think about what cut was the plane, what plane was the cut made through.